Welcome back to another episode of the Pure Hearted Podcast. I'm your host, Michaela. I realized I didn't say that in the very first episode. I'm really excited for today's topic. The Lord has been dealing with me about it a lot. So I don't know if He's trying to tell me something or, no, but I was in need of a very severe reality check, and the Lord provided on that. Thank you, Jesus. The Lord has been dealing with me about this topic for a very long time. I didn't realize I was limiting God, and to just see the freedom come from Him explaining this to me was like no other. And I hope that it does the same thing for you, where we do these things so unintentionally. I was struggling a couple months ago where I was reading the story of Naaman, and like at first glance, I'm like, Lord, what is the difference between expectation and faith? Like to me, it seemed like Naaman had the faith, right? He went there, and he expected, to be healed. And the Lord was like, Michaela, yes, he expected to be healed, but he also plotted and thought about the method. And when the method did not come packaged in the way he expected it, he almost missed out on his healing because of his expectancy. And I'm like, dang, it's walk by faith, not by sight. Walk by faith, not by your expectations of how you think God is going to move. Naaman had already plotted it all out, and for someone who is constantly in their head, I'm like, oh, I needed this. Because I'll come up with a million different situations, and when it doesn't happen any of the ways I did it, I'm like, disappointed. And so I'm so excited to talk about today's topic, which is, has our expectations become an idol, and are we missing God? And how do we navigate the tension between expectation and faith? I'm going to start in 2 Kings 5, the healing of Naaman. The king of Aram and had great admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. At this time, Armenian raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captives was a young girl who had been given to Naaman's wife as a maid. One day the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. Naaman told the king what the young girl had said. Go and visit the prophet, the king of Aram told him. I will send a letter and introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. So Naaman started out carrying as gifts 750 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter to the king of Israel said, With this letter I present my servant Naaman. I want you to heal him of his leprosy. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in dismay and said, This man sends me a leper to heal. Am I God that I can give life and take away? I can see that he's just trying to pick a fight with me. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes in dismay, he sent this message to him. Why are you so upset? Send Naaman to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet here in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses and his chariots and waited at the door of Elisha's house. But Elisha sent a messenger out to him with this message. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored and you will be healed of your leprosy. This is the part. Sorry, I gotta situate. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me, he said. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy, call on the name of the Lord his God, and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus, I'm going to butcher these and I'm sorry, Abana and the Fafar, better than any of the rivers in Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned away in rage, but his officers tried to reason with him and said, Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey when he says simply go and wash and be cured. So Naaman went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him, and his skin became as healthy as the skin of a young child, and he was healed. So we have, so on this side of it, we have Naaman, commander. He is held very high in the eyes of important people, important principalities in Syria, and he does have this disease, but it doesn't seem to affect him in Syria. And it doesn't seem to be a hindrance to him in Syria. Now, if he would have been in Israel, he would have been casted out from society. He would have been excluded from all things. So I like how we can see how pride and ego was probably affecting Naaman. Though he has this disease, he's not disregarded. Though he has this disease, he's not less than. His disease is not affecting, and is it probably affecting him consciously? Yes, but still the human adoration he gets, it's probably feeding his ego more. So we have this side of Naaman, and then we're introduced into this sweet servant girl. And I really like to talk about this servant girl. It's because this was not a willing servant who just came to be a mistress to Naaman's wife. No, this servant girl was a prisoner of war. She was taken from her family. Like, let's think about that. She did not offer to go with them with the Syrian army, no, but she was taken from her home and then placed in the house of Naaman. And instead of being bitter, so we can see from the next, what I'm gonna say, that she was raised in the faith. She was raised with the knowledge of God. She was raised with the knowledge of the prophet of God that is in Israel. So she's grown up with that knowledge in the household, and then plucked as a prisoner of war, taken to the house of Naaman. And when she sees a man suffering with a disease, she does not withhold compassion from that, but says, I wish that he would go see the prophet of God in Samaria and be healed. Let's think about that for a second. You are a prisoner of war taken from your home, and when you get here, you are not bitter, you are not withholding, you are not angry. I mean, was she probably these things, the complexity of it all? Probably. But yet, when a man is suffering, when a man has a disease, she does not say, you're on your own, you stole me, or you plucked me, and I'm a prisoner of war. But yet, she offers, hey, I know someone who can heal you if you would just be obedient and go. That is crazy to me. That is crazy that a servant girl, I keep calling her a prisoner of war, I'm sorry. A servant girl is taken from her home brutally by the Syrian army. This wasn't just, oh, we're taking her. No, she was taken brutally from her family, and she is forced to be a maid, and yet she sees this disease that Naaman has and has compassion and tells him where he might be healed and where he could go to get healed. That is so crazy, but it's so Christ-like that it aggravates me, actually, because I would not be like that in that situation. I would not go tell Naaman where he'd get healed. Bro, you literally kidnapped me. You kidnapped me, and now I'm here. I'm not telling you where you can go get healed at, bro. So we have, now we're introduced to the servant girl. So we have Naaman, who he is, his status. We have this servant girl, we have this servant girl whom he has plucked as a prisoner of war and now placed in his home. And then we have him going to the king and say, hey, this servant girl said I could go to this prophet in Samaria and be healed. So the king of Aram sends a letter to the king of Israel and says, here is my servant Naaman, heal him of his leprosy. And the king of Israel is like, it says he rent his clothes. He thought that the king of Syria sought a fight with him because who is he says, who can give life and take away life. And I love the commentary David Guzik gave where it says that the king tore his clothes thinking the king of Syria sought a fight, and then sought a fight because he expected the king of Israel to have a closer relationship with God than he actually had. The king of Israel, in the king of Aram's eyes, is supposed to have this relationship with God, that when he's sending this letter, he's not sending it to seek a fight, but really, sincerely, desperately is seeking healing for his servant Naaman. And so when the king of Israel receives this letter, I can only see it as conviction that he would tear his clothes and be like, who am I, that I could take away life or give life? And I love how David Guzik said it, is that Elisha rebukes the king and saying, this is a crisis to you because you have the opportunity to know the God who heals all lepers, yet you don't. But you could. The king of Israel should have a relationship with God. And so this seems to be a crisis to you, but it shouldn't, because God is willing to accept and have a relationship with you, but yet you don't have a relationship with him. And I just think that is so profound. Also love how David Guzik says in his commentary on 2 Kings 5 is that Naaman would have never knew there was a prophet in Israel by hanging around the palace, because the prophet wasn't welcome at the palace. And that is so astounding for me to think upon, is that if the places we hung around lacked true intimacy with God, people would never know that there was a God who still heals. So Naaman would have never known that there was truly a prophet of God in the land of Samaria that could heal lepers if he just was hanging around the palace. But yet he had to go somewhere else, to Elisha's household, to figure out that there truly was a prophet of God that was able to heal through the power of God. And so then this is where we get to my favorite part. So we have this again. We have who Naaman is, the servant girl he stole, who's still having compassion on him, the king who sends a letter to another king, and then that king to only be convicted and cast down in spirit because he doesn't actually have this relationship with God that this king thinks he does. And then we have the true prophet of God come and rebuke this king of Israel, saying, you are only acting like this because you should have a relationship with God, and has an open hand to have a relationship with you, but yet you still don't have a relationship with him. Send him to me. And so he sends him to Elisha. And here we have the part where our expectation and the tension of expectation and faith right here in this moment is when he comes to Elisha's house, awaiting Elisha to come out of the house. Elisha never comes out of the house. Now this is a stab in the heart and the pride of Naaman, because he is accustomed to being honored. He is accustomed to, having a certain response from people when they see him. He is accustomed to his pride always being stroked. And for a man of God to not come out and meet him, yet send a messenger and say, just go dip in the Jordan River 7 times, you'll be healed. It is a stab to Naaman. And he is offended. He is flabbergasted. He is certainly not happy right now. He's angry and he's ready just to go home, forget the healing. There must not be any God, because this God should honor my status, So obviously I'm not getting healed today because there is no God, not because it's of my pride. Okay? And so then Naaman just goes and says, surely I thought that he would come out to me, wave his hand over my skin, in the name of the Lord be healed, and I would be healed. I expected that would happen. Let me read the exact words, because I was kind of paraphrasing in that, but I love how he says it. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me, he said. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord his God and heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus and the other ones better than any of the rivers in Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned away in rage. Naaman had it all figured out. There was no need for faith because the expectation he had already come up in his plan was exactly how it should have happened, or there is no God. The plan he came up with on the journey to Samaria did not involve God at all, but he still expected somehow a heavenly outcome to happen. I gotta say that again. On the journey there, Naaman is in his head, predicting, expecting, going back and forth like, oh, maybe he'll do it like this. No, oh, maybe he'll do it like this. Oh, no, maybe he'll do it like this. Naaman in his head is, oh, yeah, yep, that's how it's going to happen. Oh, no, yeah, that's even better. Oh, you know what? No, you know what he's just going to do? He's just going to take his hand, probably his right hand, and wave it over all this leprosy and call on the name of the Lord and say, be healed, Naaman, and I'm going to be healed. That's how it's gonna happen. Where was God in any of that? Nowhere. God was nowhere in that plan. Naaman was enthroned in the place of his mind that he could not get up and allow God to come and actually sit on the throne of his mind and just have expectancy that he was just going to get healed. Not how the method was going to happen. So Naaman had it all figured out. There was no need for faith because he had already come up in his mind how it was going to happen. How many of us do that? How many of us get in a predicament we're in need of, whether it be physical healing or whether it just needed provision, or guidance, but we come up with the way in our mind of how God's going to do it, and when he doesn't show up in that way, we think surely there's no God in Israel at all because he didn't show up and do it the way I would have done it. And when I was reading this, I was wrestling with the fact of, Lord, at first glance, this seems to be, faith to me. This seems to be, but that's how prideful I was, if I'm just being honest. I saw that, I'm like, I do that all the time. So he had faith, my expectation, I'm thinking, was faith, and it wasn't at all. And then it took the Lord showing me that, no, that was not faith because that was rooted in control. His expectation was rooted in control. And I felt like the Lord just started to speak to me about how all the things we go through, there are like multiple types, of, he just began to speak to me about trauma and expectation. And so I had to Google, all the ways trauma growing up. And I don't like to just throw the word trauma around lightly. I feel like there has been, type of, how you throw these words out, then they start to get overused. And now you really don't know if it's trauma or if this person, is just, I won't say it, but, So I started to look up the different types of, ways trauma can affect your expectations. And so there are 3 that came up. And then I typed in what I did to see if they had a name for it. So I'll get to that. So the one was being a lowered expectation of safety and trust. So where you just lower it automatically. And if someone meets that, it is what it is. And then there's a fear-based expectation where you're expecting things not out of hope, not out of goodness, but out of fear, And then there's negative self-expectations where you always just expect the negative things to happen, nothing ever hopeful, nothing ever good to happen to you. And then I started to type in what I do for my expectation, and I'll tell you what I do. So I put the expectation bar so high that when no one meets them, this is what I'm thinking in my brain. It doesn't sound logical when you explain it, but, when you are hurt and trying to heal, this is, you're not trying to heal. When you're hurt, this is what happens. Is I would set my expectations so unrealistically high as a defense mechanism so that I wouldn't be hurt when people just didn't meet them at all. To only lead up disappointed because they didn't even come close to the expectations I had for them. And so I had to look that up to see if that was a real thing. And they're like, yes, some people do that. They just set the expectation so high so that even if you did the 99, you didn't get the whole 100. So I can't be disappointed. But then I'm just left disappointed anyway because of my expectations were so high. So Naaman's story is an example of how pride, control, and expectation can clash with faith and obedience. I'm going to say that again. Naaman's story is an example of how pride, control, and expectation can clash with faith and obedience. Naaman expected a dramatic healing that matched his status. The Jordan River was beneath Naaman. The Jordan River was, under his feet. It was the Jordan River. There are better rivers out there. Why am I going to cleanse and wash in the Jordan River that is beneath me? And I just feel every time in my spirit is woe to us when we seek after the healing or the provision of God and the way He suggests is beneath us. That we would, oh, Jesus, help us, God, that we would humble ourselves as Jesus was humble. If His expectation would have just been for healing, that would have been okay, right? Because he wasn't predicting the method or the outcome. He just knew that when he would be leaving Israel, he would be healed. That would have been okay. That might have been faith. But it was the fact that Naaman had already expected the method of which he would have been healed. And if we come up with the method, we will miss God every time. We will miss God every time if we're focusing on how and not just, I don't know how He's going to do it, but He's going to do it. And if not, I'm going to be straight even if He doesn't do it. And in Naaman's delusion and pride, he should just be one grateful that God is willing, and then and be grateful just for Him moving at all. Because Naaman's a Gentile. So the fact that one, God already has His hand over him and has given him victory, that's not enough for him. Now he wants healing and he wants to control the healing and he wants to control where it happens and how it happens, and he's not grateful for anything. And so Naaman's anger reveals the ego beneath the expectation. And expectation becomes an idol when it is based on what we think we deserve or what fits our narrative. Expectation becomes an idol when it's based on what we think we deserve or how it fits the narrative. Expectation rooted in control says God should do this because I prayed, or God should do this because I served, or God should do this because I believed. When faith says, even if it isn't the way I imagined it, I'm going to trust in God. Faith submits and expectation demands. Faith submits and expectation demands. Thankfully, we have someone in their right mind with Naaman and his crew that he took down there, the sovereignty of God, that said, if He would told you to do something difficult, would you have done it? So can you just obey and do this? So that is why it's so important for the people we have around us. If they are not willing to humble us, it's probably the wrong people around us anyway. They're probably just flattering us anyway. And we need less of us. So thank God that there's a servant with Naaman who says, can you just obey? And I believe that's when the real healing begins. Is the real healing begun when he was willing to let go of his expectations and just follow in faith blindly. And so, as I end this podcast, I just want to leave us with a few questions to sit with. Well, I'll tell us the rest of the story. Real quick paraphrasing is Naaman does end up going to the river 7 times. He went to the river and he dipped 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 and he dipped. I don't know if that was 7 or 6. I don't know. But he dipped. And he came up whole and healed and had skin as a child's skin. And he comes to Elisha and offers to give all these gifts to him. But he says, no, now is not the time for taking gifts. And so, as I end this podcast, I want to leave us with a few questions. Is that, where have I tied God's faithfulness to my expectations? Where have I limited God? Am I missing answers because they don't look how I imagined them? Am I willing to obey even if it's beneath me? Which truly, if the Lord is saying to do it, it can't be beneath us, but our pride tells us that it is. So let us repent of our pride, ask to be humble, and then let's look at the thing again, what God is telling us to do, and we will see that it was not beneath us the whole time. Because true faith isn't about scripting God's actions, it is about trusting his character. It is about trusting that God is who he says he is, and even if it doesn't look like, who he says he is, it's still trusting that he is. Are we walking in faith, or are we walking in expectation disguised as faith? So I think we have a lesson to learn from Naaman. This is not in any way, like I said in the beginning, is the Lord is still teaching me this. I haven't fully yet arrived. I'm still dealing with expectations. I'm still trying to cast them down. I'm still trying to remind myself that my expectation is not God. God is God, and God will do what he wants to do because God is Lord over all creation. He is sovereign. He has a plan for me that is better than my plan. He has a hope for me that is better than I could even hope for. He has a dream for me that's bigger than the dreams I'm dreaming. God is God. He is a man of his word. He's not a man that he should lie. No word he speaks will ever fall to the ground. If he's given me a promise, he is faithful and true. I'm still wrestling. I'm not coming here saying that, your expectation is idle and you need to cast it down. I mean, that's true, but I'm not saying that out of a condemnation and to guilt you and to shame you. I'm saying it as someone who is learning that, but still, even in the learning, I have found so much freedom in knowing that I don't have to come up with the method. I just have to walk in faith and say, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to get healed, but I believe that he's going to heal me. I don't know how the money for ministry is going to come, but I just believe that it's going to come. I don't know how the move to Orlando is going to go, but I just believe that he'll get me there safely. It's not about knowing, and I thank God that he's taken that weight off my shoulders. I'm now, like I said, I still struggle with it. I'm not 100% perfect. But even just reflecting in this moment, I'm so glad that the weight is no longer there. And every time it does try, I can just push it off. That's not on me. Oh, that's not on me. Oh, the weight of that situation, that problem. If I'm following the Lord, right, his burden is light. His yoke is easy. If I'm following the Lord, if I'm truly submitting to the Lord, I don't have to come up with the method. That's something unbelievers have to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they don't believe in him. I believe. And if I believe, I have to believe what this word says. And it says that he has plans for us. And that was when they were in Babylonian exile. So even in exile, God has nothing but plans for good and for hope for me. That one day he will come rescue me out of exile. That one day he will come and deliver his servant. I just have to walk it out. And that's rough. I'm not saying this is easy. I feel like that's the one thing is I will never tell you that it's going to be easy. I'm going to tell you it's going to be hard. One, because when we start truly walking after the purpose the Lord has for us, there's going to be attack from the enemy on that to pursue the purpose, but also your flesh. You know, not every attack is from the enemy. It is your flesh trying to fight against it wants to do what it wants when it wants. And sometimes submitting to the Lord means, you know what, I'm going to say this as well. Just the other day, the Lord convicted me of idleness and laziness. I'm expecting that I have another day to do this, and I don't. Well, the Lord has graced me with another day, yes. But if I think about it, do I truly have another day? It's the Lord who wakes me up. When we put into perspective that it's the Lord who does everything, it's the Lord who wakes me up in the morning, it's the Lord who gets me to work safely, it's the Lord who provides food for me to eat, it's the Lord who provides clothes on my back, it's the Lord who provides gas in my tank, it's the Lord who provides all the things that I need throughout the day. It's the Lord. I don't have to worry about another thing. It may seem like I'm the one at work getting the money, but truly the only reason I have this job is because of the Lord. It may seem like, it may seem like, but it's the Lord. And so I want us to wrestle with this expectation and faith, especially for us overthinkers, especially for us overanalyzers. I want us to sit in our minds and wrestle with, is this expectation wrapped as faith, or is just this faith? If you have the method and the means of how it's going to end the means, it's probably not faith, it's expectation. But if you just have the end part of, and the Lord provided, and the Lord healed, and the Lord, or sometimes we like to say it, but God, but God, but God. None of the rest of the sentence matters. The method, Lord, is yours. I'm just expecting, but God. I'm just having faith for, but God. I'm just having faith for, and the Lord. I'm just expecting, and the Lord. I'm expecting the Lord to interject somehow. That's all I got, is he's going to interject somehow. And I'm going to be straight either way because he's my keeper. So I said I was closing out this podcast, like 10 minutes ago. But I just want us to wrestle with those questions of, are we walking in faith, or am I walking in expectation disguised as faith? Am I willing to obey even if it's what I think is beneath me? And I pray that we would repent of our pride and that we would be more lowly and meek like Jesus. And am I missing answers because they didn't come robed and clothed and set apart the way I imagined? And then where have I limited and tied him up because I was taking his faithfulness as expectation?